Hello and welcome back to the Awakening Philosophy podcast. My name is Jed, and today we are maybe going to take a pause from our reading of the second case study that we've been reviewing in philosophical midwifery. What is philosophical midwifery? It's the art, it's the skill, it's the practice, it's the art of how to discover and remove the cause of human problems. Do you notice there are problems in the world? Do you notice that they're not changing? It's almost as though we lack the tools needed to understand the cause of human problems and the skill or art needed to address it. Not only that, without understanding the skill, knowledge, and art involved in removing problems, we can't demand leaders use it to benefit the subjects. And art has to benefit the subjects. The art of medicine has to benefit the patient. That's the hippopotamus oath that all doctors take. For some reason, we have not recognized that there should be equally a hippopotamus oath for politicians who rule society and spiritual figures or religious figures who claim to speak for the soul, so that there are those two specific professions where people can go and act out their ignorance and harm people. We do not demand an understanding of the model. We don't demand a vision and experience of the ideal of the soul, the ideal of the society. Now, soul and society can be recognized as, there's a fancy word for this? Coincidental. They're the same. What's good for the society what's good for the soul is good for the society. We want to have a society in which the souls can harmonize together, live in harmony with each other and with our planet, but also have the conditions for souls to go through the process of removing problems, purification, and then using that freedom from problems to perfect our growth through understanding. So, as we don't recognize there is an art of the soul, as there is an art of medicine for the body, we let the worst sociopaths, the most ignorant and sick people, have a job where they can inflict the most suffering on our species. You can call them cult leaders or religious figures. You can call them politicians. And it's easy to tell because they don't speak of understanding and knowledge. They only speak of belief. What we are recognizing is the movement from belief into understanding is learning. You can't just have beliefs about how a car engine works that you picked up from childhood. Tonka truck goes brr. No. You have to go to, mechanic school, engineering school, to develop an understanding. We recognize that's the same for medicine, for flying a plane, but for some reason, the biggest jerks among us can say, hey, I don't need understanding of how the ideal of a society. I just believe this. It's my belief that X, Y, and Z. And as we are seeing playing out in our world, those people can manipulate the false beliefs of others, racism, say, hey, aren't you racist? Then invoke me in. I'm also racist, but I'm going to harm you in all sorts of the most cruel ways that I was harmed growing up. Why? Because our beliefs come from imitation. Imitation of the same sort of injustice we suffered in childhood. So you could look at Netanyahu and say, oh, look at how he's manipulating people, blackmailing people, torturing people, setting up false flags to justify genocide, lying to people. I wonder where he learnt all that stuff. He wasn't born knowing all this stuff. He must have learnt it somewhere. Equally so for Trump. What a sexist, racist, cruel person. I wonder where he learned that. What we are learning is, of course, our teachers, our earliest teachers, teach us how to do these things. Because for the first, 16, 18 years of our life, where we're learning how to talk, how to live, what's real, being a human being, we're stuck with our first teachers, who themselves don't have an understanding of the soul, don't have an understanding, knowledge, and art of true care, of true love. They're just going on the beliefs that they carry, which they got from their parents, and they got from their parents, and so on and so on. We are living a kind of brain rot society where the ignorance of one generation is passed on to the next over and over until someone in that lineage decides to wake up and do better. I want to put an end to this sickness. I don't want to continue this cycle of violence and ignorance. I'm going to change things in my family lineage. These are the good people. These are the people we're reaching out to in this channel. People who are like, well, I still like being a fascist like my father, or a sexist like my mother, or a racist like whoever was my parent, or whoever was my earliest teachers. These people are not going to learn. Until enough of us demonstrate a new way of being where they can look over the fence and go, oh my God, these people are having a lot more fun. And these people have taken the guns away from the ignorant people, so we can't play out our cruelty with impunity anymore. If we want to have any sort of fun in life, we better do some work and understand things. So, who were our first teachers? Obviously, our parents. Did they have an understanding and knowledge and art? No. Where did they learn from? Their parents. Where did they learn from? Their parents. It's not actually a teaching, as we've been reading in the book. It's an imitation of a way of being. So we're seeing playing out in the world, especially in those professions where understanding is not demanded, people playing out their ignorance of their false beliefs, playing out the cruelty and injustice on others that they had suffered themselves. Why? Because they have not yet learnt to reflect on those earliest teachers and learnt how to challenge them with understanding to free them from false beliefs. The movement from belief-based thinking into understanding is a freedom, because beliefs are based on other people believing someone else, and they're based on images, shapes, and colors. Everyone loves their parents. Why? Did you pick all of the parents from all of your parents in the street who was the most worthy of love? No. Did you pick from your city who was the most good and caring and beautiful people and decided to love them as a child? No. By virtue of this human game we are born into, we are forced into a dependent relationship where we have to, for our survival. We don't have to, but there is a kind of survival benefit of believing our parental figures are actually caring for us, are actually loving, are actually wise, are actually knowing. Now, this isn't a teaching. You can't ask questions. You can't talk back at a certain age. As soon as you can't get a pathologos belief. But in that period where it was too dangerous, or we weren't able to, or we were too young to reflect with understanding and question them, that's when we picked up false beliefs through imitation. These false beliefs are called pathologos. These are what dictate the course of our entire lives. The fact that they play out on every area of our life in every area of our life means we have many opportunities to reflect on them, discover them, and solve them, because they play out everywhere. They play out in our random thoughts, our distractions, our tangents, our fantasies, our relationships, our work, our play. They play out everywhere. And they even play out in our dreams when we sleep. Meaning every message from mind is a potential doorway to the richest source of insight into what is most important for every single human being to do. Discover their fundamental false belief about themselves, the world, and what's good and loving and caring. That's the cause of their perpetual suffering. As we talk to ourselves in that way, we treat ourselves in that way, we anticipate the world in that way. But also, if we have any power over others, that's the flavor of injustice that we inflict on others. It's no coincidence that Trump's father was a KKK dude and a sexist. And so on and so on. We are learning to reflect on ourselves with reason and integrity and courage, which has the potential to unlock our potential by freeing us from what causes our injustice and suffering, what chains us to belief-based thinking, so that we can apply that freedom to engage in a higher level of being, a more evolved level of being, understanding. Not imitating, understanding for yourself. Not listening to others, being a slave, ruling your own life, ruling your own soul. Not inflicting the cruelty that we were suffered, but having the potential to understand what is the true nature of goodness, what is the true nature of the human soul, so that we can put both of those together to act in a truly loving and caring, rational, mature way. So, the movement from belief as a way of relating to ourselves and the world to understanding is learning. It's also spiritual. It's the spiritual journey. Because the realm of the spirit, or the realm of being, is itself understandable, intelligible, and knowable. That's the spiritual experience. And even that realm can be reflected on. After you come back, the experience itself isn't all at oneness. But as you come back to your body, you want to reflect on that experience and recognize it has aspects. Everything was perfectly ordered the way it must be. Justice. Could that be the model of justice for our own lives? For our own societies? For how to have a just soul? Everything in that experience was perfectly symmetrical and ordered and proportional. It was beauty itself. Could that be the model for everything beautiful we want to create in our lives, in our world? We can recognize that the spiritual experience, mind knowing itself completely, is understandable. It's intelligible. And in philosophy, we want to go a step further and say, well, what caused that? What were the causes and conditions for there to be such an experience of eternal being, the spiritual experience? What are the causes and conditions for it to be understandable and knowable through direct experience? What are the causes and conditions for there to be something that has that experience, that develops that understanding, and that can learn to put the two together to function with it artfully to benefit? That's the movement from philosophy to philophronesis, wondering about the self. The Greek maxim was, know thyself. To know thyself, which is beyond even being. What we are learning in philosophical midwifery is exactly what is involved for human beings to go through that. We've looked at two case studies, and we're seeing people review scenes they've reviewed before. People who have explored their problems for 2 years and they're still seeing new things in the same scene that they've been reviewing, sometimes different scenes. We've read earlier that our problems are like a diamond, a multifaceted diamond. We have to see all of the aspects to it before we become free of it. So, if what's needed to solve human problems is to understand the nature of belief, understand the nature of understanding, and understand how specifically to make that transition, if this is what's needed to solve human problems, and this is the spiritual method, not the. However you get into that experience, Buddhist meditation, a Taoist, ashram retreat, a mantra, breath work, psychedelics, dream work, childbirth. However you have had that experience, you would still want to understand it, understand what it is, understand how you can integrate it into your life, understand how to get back into it again, understand how to get into it in greater depth, and understand it so you can reflect on its causes to go beyond it. In other words, however you get it, you'd still want to understand it. Anyone who says you can't understand it, anyone who says don't understand it, anyone who says, hey, just believe me, don't understand it for yourself, is literally oppressing your development. Knowingly, in the case of many grifters and scammers and people who seek those positions of authorities to abuse others, or unknowingly, because they've never reflected on those teachings, that you can't know anything or just believe papa. Therefore, however you get it, you'll still want to understand. You'll still need to understand. Meaning the art of understanding, philodianoia, is the spiritual tradition, especially as understanding itself is a yoga, is a method. The dialectic could be understood as what brings together all of the aspects. Sustained focus, like in meditation, that's involved in the dialectic. Open, curious mind, like a koan in Buddhism, that's involved in the dialectic. Using your highest vision. Well, there are some traditions that talk about visualization, aren't there? Applying your highest understanding. That one's only in the dialectic, by the way. Keeping your cool as you go through that. Recognizing counterattacks or distractions. Some meditations say, hey, Stay focused on the flame or your breath, and any thought that comes up, let it float away like a cloud. That's the dialectic too. Only the dialectic doesn't just recognize the distractions and counterattacks, we understand them. We put them aside so that we can remove the cause of them later. So we don't have to just develop effort. We can be free of them. They won't come up anymore. In other words, taking all of the good aspects all of the effective parts of any spiritual tradition, and if you put them together and you add a couple of things that are missing in all other traditions, will give you the complete spiritual tradition. Philodianoia, the love of understanding, the dialectic of the logos. So, the love of understanding, philodianoia, is necessary to understand and remove problems. It's the spiritual art. And it's also our evolution. Because our ignorance, when we think in terms of belief, can play out in our culture and in our species. That can put an end to our species. It's the cause of all the cruelty that we see happening, and it will be the cause of our destruction and extinction if we don't address it. Whereas, being able to solve problems through understanding, being able to recognize the true nature and excellence of the soul through understanding, being able to implement it in our society through understanding, such that we are harmonized with all living beings and the planet through understanding, is the necessary next step in our evolution as animals, as evolving species. It's the game. It's the noblest game, and some people say it's the only real game in town. So, seeing as we have been seeing all that for ourselves through our own understanding, through reading this book together, I thought it might be fun to take a pause and jump into the Republic, Book 6, to have a quick look at Plato's divided line, where he outlines specifically the difference between belief-based thinking, our barbarian side, our zombie virus side, our disgusting side, our cruelty side, our end of the species side, and understanding-based thinking, cognition, apprehension, our evolved side, our able to be spiritual side, our able to help people side, our able to discover a new higher version of love and care side. What's the difference between belief and understanding? If that's the whole game, if that's the divide, if that's where we're sitting on as individuals and as a species, what's the difference between belief and understanding? Is it a gradient? Or are they completely different? The fancy word is incommensurate. Two completely different things. In the same way, you wouldn't say, how many liters of the marathon did you run today? You would go, what the heck? Liters? You mean miles? Because liters and distance are incommensurate. They're two different things. They apply to two different things. You can't say, how many, I don't know, what would you say? What's another measurement? How many grams of Severance did you watch today on Netflix? How many grams? It's not grams, it's time or episodes. Incommensurate. Distinct. Apply to different sorts of things. Is that the difference between belief and understanding? Is that why what we are doing is not justifying the false beliefs we get from childhood, from our earliest teachers, through imitation? While also developing understanding that contradicts it? No. What we're doing is understanding and uncovering our false beliefs and removing them, freeing them. Not keeping a little bit because, I want to pretend mummy was actually blah. No, you can't. You can't carry what's false if you want the truth. If you want to evolve, if you want to be a good person. It's the removal of one to create the freedom to participate in the other. Is that what it is? If so, they have to be incommensurate different things. So, how are we going to learn the difference between understanding and belief? It's not taught in schools. I don't see anyone down at my local pub talking about this. I don't see anybody on the news programs talking about this. I don't see anybody in the philosophy debate 20 fascists versus one reporter, 20 murderers versus one civilian debate, epically own YouTube slop content. I don't see anything online talking about this. I haven't even heard of a subject which specifically deals with the different sorts of cognition. It's not offered at schools. So where can we learn about it? Fortunately, there was a dude named Socrates who went to the schools, realized the teachers were very limited, especially when they were only explaining the causes of things in terms of physical stuff. We read this in the Phaedo together. Hey, all of the teachers were saying, the cause for things are your bones and your sinews. Like we hear at school, the cause of things is physical things. If you've got a problem or an illness, it's because of a physical imbalance. Or you've got a physical illness and you've got ADD or something. It's all physical. And Socrates thought, hang on a second, the reason I'm sitting here is because I think it's good to be here. So where's the thinking and where's the goodness? That's not a bone or a sinew. It's not a physical thing. It's not a chemical squirting endorphins. Because if I thought it would be more good or beautiful to be somewhere else, I'd be boning and sinewing my way out the door. And then he realized, well, okay, it's not taught at schools. That's the movement from philomathesis, loving learning, to philosophy. Realizing our true object of study is the mind, being. That which can be apprehended directly and confirmed in direct experience. And the greatest experience. The cause of all understandability in our physical world. The source of intelligibility itself. Philosophy, real learning. So, fortunately, there was that guy. We did kill him instead of listening to him, giving us the terrible dystopian hellscape of capitalism, fascism, oppression, and ignorance that we see today. At the end of pages and pages of human history soaked in blood. That's what happens if we don't listen to Socrates. But what happens if we do listen to Socrates? Because he did talk about the difference between belief and understanding, and he even gave us a wonderful diagram to explain it. Now, because of the great revolution in philosophy, where we have been able to actually translate the ancient Greek properly, thanks to the work by Juan Balboa and the Balboa family, we're able to have a look at his model and take a course for free on this channel. Hooray for us. Of course, you can donate to the channel if you wish. We can take that course that we need to take as human beings, that we have been ignoring for 2,000 years and more, and it's that ignoring that is being the cause of the tremendous injustice and suffering we've been experiencing individually and as a species. That might itself put an end to our whole planet and race itself. So, we don't have to do that, thanks to the Balboas and thanks to streaming platforms, where it would be very unlikely that someone like this guy would ever find anybody interested in talking about this shit in his block or down at his pub or even at his local mall. But because we can share through YouTube and Twitch and Discord, there might be a few people, hopefully a few dozen people, maybe one day a few hundred people out there in the world who are interested in becoming better people, who are interested in solving problems, who do love understanding already, who maybe even have had an experience, a profound non-physical experience themselves, and have been curious about what the heck it is, or it was, and why was it so profound? And why don't I remember it? And why is it that everyone I've talked to about this has tried to shut it down or dismiss it, or mock me, and feel some sort of pleasure in dismissing it or negating it? What the fuck was with that? Has that been your experience? Has it been a love of understanding? Has it been a profound experience? Has it been a curiosity? Has it been a desire to solve your problems? Has it been a desire to solve the world problems and actually benefit? Has it been a desire to reach your highest potential and excellence? Whatever it is that has led you here, thanks to this platform, we can connect. Because at the moment, these people are rare. As weird as it might seem, considering how rational it is and how obvious it is once you say it out loud, there aren't a lot of people interested. Yet. Meaning, you and me, the people here who are interested, have some fucking work to do. Or rather, some play to have. Because
you're a wizard, Harry.
You're a wizard, Harry. This isn't just your quest, it's the human quest. And also,
I'm looking for someone to share in an adventure.
This human quest, the archetype of the hero's journey, is for everyone. So we're looking for everyone to share in an adventure. It's not a solo quest. So, thankfully we can actually pick that up and learn it because of the Balboa translation of Plato, and because Socrates was around, and because he had someone like Plato writing shit down for him. By the way, so therefore we can go into that part where he talks about the difference between belief and understanding and try to nail down for ourselves what exactly that is, seeing as we have seen how goddamn significant it is in everything, literally. And therefore you can say, well, it's our job as human beings. One of the reasons we are here is to nail down this difference. So we can understand what exactly is belief, which we do through midwifery as well, what exactly is understanding, which we develop through philosophy, and how do we make that transition, which we do with the aid of dream analysis. 3 fundamental aspects of philodainoia, along with sharing it. Mythology or creation. So, we can jump in and do that. Isn't that neat? You can understand understanding, understand belief, understand how they're different. So, let's have fun and jump in. So, we have we have a new text on the screen. It's Book 6 of the Republic, again, the Balboa translation. And as we've been saying, we get to do philosophy once again for the first time in like 1,000 years or more, because we have an actual translation of the text. Now, often we get people coming in saying things like, didn't Socrates say that he was wise because he knew nothing? Or didn't Socrates have an idea of the forms? Or sometimes people will say, I've never heard the word phronesis mentioned in Socrates or in Plato. I've never heard of something beyond philosophy called philophronesis. Or they might say something like, I didn't know that philosophy was about the self. I thought it was a logical exercise. I didn't know the hypotheses of Parmenides were describing different states of being and understanding to do with the self. All of these problems come from certain translators over the years. Like, for example, Jowett giving the word forms instead of eidos, which means to behold or aspect. But all of those problems are due to fundamental mistranslations, great betrayals of philosophy. So all of the misconceptions we have about philosophy, such that we have almost the opposite idea of what philosophy really is, are due to bad translations. Because what do you know it, even translators are human beings, and therefore they have pathologos that distort and warp their vision of the logos and of reality, causing their problems. And they lived in societies that are ruled by people who themselves have pathologos, and therefore their pathologos plays out in society, which also adds further restrictions on translations and so on. But fortunately, we have the book translated properly with the actual Greek written there, so we can read it for ourselves. Hooray for us. Hooray. All the children are happy.
Unbelievable sluts these days.
These days. So, we're going to take that translation and we're going to read that part that we need to read to see if we can nail down what is the difference specifically between belief and understanding, so that we can understand our journey and what we are facilitating others through in the art of midwifery as benefiting people, as the best sorts of people, or guides, healers. We are at 509C. That's the Stephanus number. That's the number to do with the ancient Greeks. So no matter what translation you're reading, you can be reading the same section. It's called the Stephanus number. But we are in the Balboa translation. And if you Google Plato's Republic Balboa, Balboa, you'll find it online. Get yourself a free copy. Sometime, hopefully soon, maybe, depending on what's going on, we will go through the whole Republic together on the channel. That'll be a lot of fun. Oh, and by the way, I am still in the middle of trying to make some character overlays for the next book we're going to be reading, Jesus and Socrates, A Dialogue in Heaven, to make it a little bit more fun. I'm not a programmer, so it's taking a long-ass time. But yeah, the idea I'll maybe have some Socrates, a character of Socrates and a character of Jesus, and they come up when I talk, kind of like a JRPG game. So it's not just me and Stuffy on the screen reading. But I'm still working on that. As soon as that gets done, we'll jump into that text. I'm getting closer every day. So page 40 of the Balboa, 509c. So in the story, just a quick recap. It begins with Socrates being kidnapped at a certain festival that he and his student Glaucon have gone to see. Now, there's a lot of significance in who the festival was for, the fact that it was a foreign god being introduced to Athens, Bendis. And of course, there's a significance to it's the whole book, which is supposedly about justice, beginning with a kidnapping. They kidnap Socrates. So they're a bunch of kids, a bunch of rich kids, kidnap Socrates, take him to their house, and they say, hey, Socrates, tell us what justice is, and explain to us why it's better to be a just person, even if everyone else thinks you're unjust, even if you've got haters and groups of haters that raid your chat and abuse you or whatever and call you unjust. Even then, explain to us why it's better to be just. And compare it to the perfectly unjust person who can get away with all of their scams and scam even their wife. And no one knows, and even the gods don't know that they're being scammed. So can grift everyone, and everyone thinks they're the best person in the world. So explain why the just person is preferable to the unjust person, even in those extreme conditions. That's where the book is. They're at the house with the kids, and they're talking, but over the course of the dialogue, it's 6 books in. There are 10 books of the Republic in total. The kids at the house have kind of fallen away. Their ability to follow the dialectic, the dialogue, exploring and bringing us all to the nature of justice itself, their ability to participate in that, they kind of hit their limits at various stages. Different people representing different states of being, by the way. That's mythology. That's the 4th part of Philadelphia. Can you take what you've learned about different states of being and their ability to share in the logos and reason in the dialectic and represent it as characters in a book? A model. So he's left talking with his own student, Glaucon. Okay, and so we're at the end of book 6. He's just given the sun analogy, which we won't go into right now. There's a lot of puzzles in there, and we look for puzzles as we read. So, that's where we are. Let's jump in and see if we can find out some things about belief versus understanding. Narrator, Socrates. Then Glaucon, in a very jovial manner, said, Apollo! Oh, okay. There's a Socrates guy, and then there's a Glaucon guy. I'll do Glaucon. Apollo of the hyperlic heights of daemons. What? Oh, okay. Apollo, of course, is the god of philosophy, represents philosophy. Daemon, of course, is the voice of the self that guides us along that path. And the Daemon is the voice of our pathologos that binds us to our problems until we master the art of midwifery, which we're here to do, and free ourselves from it so we don't have those thoughts coming up to distract us, even from your meditations. Daemon versus the Eudaimon. Voice of the self versus the voice of the pathologos. False image of the self. But he was just exclaiming something because Socrates just dropped something big. Okay, we're not going to get into it. Okay, I'll read it quickly just because it might give us some puzzles to carry. Now then, says Socrates, we may also say that those ideas of knowledge and truth that are knowable, are not only provided the means to which they can be intuitively recognized by the good. Now, intuitively recognized is the closest English word we have for not a kind of knowingness which we call ousia or nous, where that's the spiritual experience, the object of knowledge. You can know it all at once. You can grasp it with your mind itself. So the translator picks intuitively recognized and puts it in purple, so we know it's a special word. Okay. So when we talk about understanding being the spiritual process, it should lead you to the spiritual experience, that which is knowable, eternal, for everyone, universal, where all of the causes and principles of our physical world lie, where they came from, and where they exist. 2 and 2 will always equal 4. How come? Where does that live? The model of justice that we may not ever be able to completely replicate in our world, maybe we can, but we want to use as our model as best to replicate. For beauty, for justice, that's this. Okay? Knowledge and truth that are known with a capital K. Have the means, you can know it because of this other thing called the good. Also, their very being and their ousia, the capacity for mind to turn around and know itself, are derived from that source. So this is the idea that there's the physical world, there's the realm of being, which exists by mind knowing itself, or ousia, which means we can also know it. It's grasped in that experience of nous. But for it to be a knowable experience, for us to be able to have knowledge and grasp the truth about reality, means there has to be something providing the means for its knowability. In other words, like for you to see this stuffy here, you need some conditions and causes. You need an eye, that's a cause. But you need conditions. Even if you had an eye, you still wouldn't be able to see stuffy unless light exists. So light is a precondition for you to know it through sight, you could say, or see it. Equally so, there is something providing the means through which we can recognize the good. Now, we're not talking about this now. This is just the sentence before where we're starting. Just to wet your whistle and give you a bit of a teaser for how awesome the Republic is. And how significant it is that we can actually read the fucking thing for the first time in 2,000 years. Super, super important. Because he's talking about not only the spiritual experience that some people fight wars about, the Abrahamic religions who say you can't know it and I will kill you if you ever say that you can, because you have to just believe us and give us your money and let us kill people and let us side with the Nazis in the Third Reich and let us murder people and colonize the world in the Crusades and let us murder everyone because we're stopping understanding in the Dark Ages. Yes, you can't know it. Many wars over that. And people who think you can know it, but only in our way. Only Buddhism. Only Hare Krishnas. Only Taoists. Only Hindus. Same conflicts. Well, how about stop picking teams like children and just understand it? Understand that it is knowable. Screw you to anyone who says that you can't. Usually they are grifters. But not only that, screw you to anybody who says this is it. You can't go beyond Buddha. You can't go beyond your spiritual figure. Because there must be something giving the conditions and causes for there to be a knowable experience of being where you know the truth of reality. Yourself. And Socrates has been talking about it. He's just given us a big analogy. Just as the sun provides conditions for things to be for growth and generation and nourishment, so too there has to be something allowing what gives us our growth and nourishment of our soul. Being. There has to be a cause of being. Just like sun is the cause of physical plants and things. Isn't that neat? Then be excited and join the channel and our Discord, because we'll get into this book soon once we have enough people interested in it and whatever. Anyway, this is just a teaser. There has to be something for those ideas of knowledge and truth to be known and demanded of any politician and any ruler, not just belief, fuck that. They are provided by means to which, those ideas of knowledge and truth that are known are not only provided the means by which they are intuitively recognized all at once by its cause, the good, but also their very being itself, their ousia, comes from that source. Whereas the ousia is not the good. Taoists who stop there. Since the good itself transcends beyond ousia in both dignity, rank, value, and in power. It's a whole different kettle of fish. It's a whole different realm. It's a different ballgame in dignity, in rank, and in power. That can be a huge shock to people who've had that experience, because you recognize yourself intuitively, you know the truth of reality, existence itself. But then to hear this, holy crap, it can be a huge shock. Just as in midwifery, recognizing our ideas of ourself and our ideas of our first teachers who we trust the beliefs from, finding out that that's bullshit and the cause of our problems is a huge shock. Because doesn't that guy from Fast and Furious say, family is number one, family is family. Family, I also do my car racing because family. To find out that family not only isn't number one, but is the cause of our problems, that's a huge shock. To find out this self that you've been identified with, your image that's molded your face, molded your gestures, how you relate to people, what goals you choose, what you think you can and can't do. To find out that's all horse shit derived from an imitation, from someone copying the horse shit that they got from their parents, and so on and so on. That can be a huge shock. What is the shock? To find out what you thought is self isn't self. Now, we do midwifery because we want that, because we don't want a limited self, because we don't want to be blocked from our goals. We don't want to feel crappy feelings when we seek beauty or seek meaning. But when you get to this level, you think, well, I've got it now. I've reached home base. I've finished the race. I know myself, and I will never believe anyone who tells me I'm not good enough, or I'm not capable enough, or I'm not ultimately beautiful, or I'm not divine. I will never fall into that shit, because I know in the highest experience of knowledge itself, that's really me. The second hypothesis of Parmenides. To find out that isn't can be a shock. But we have been reading the Meno, and we want that shock. We want to be confused. We want to be stung and open and curious and keep seeking to keep going beyond, further and further. How far can we go? Can we go beyond even experience? Can we go beyond even the Buddha, which is a title? So can we go even beyond Gautama? How far he got? The dude's name. So anyway, there has to be a cause even of pure ousia, knowledge and truth, and a cause for us being able to apprehend it in that cognitive function of ousia. And that cause, which he calls the good, or earlier he calls it the good self, has to be higher even than ousia in rank and in power. Now, okay, that's just the prelude. Now forget about all that. Pretend that didn't happen. Now we're going to read what we're here to read. Glaucon said, "Oh my God, holy crap! Dear Jesus, Socrates." Or, as they would say it in those days, Apollo of hyperbolic heights of daemons. The greatest height, the greatest daemon of the greatest voice of the self. Apollo, the god of philosophy. Oh, dear Jesus. They didn't have Jesus back then. That would be what he's saying here. And Socrates says, hey, you are the cause. Don't blame me. You are the cause for me saying all this that you're saying dear Jesus about, or their version. For compelling me to say what appears to be the case concerning self, the greatest betrayal of our cultural, spiritual, education, and evolutionary heritage is the non-translation of this one word, auto. Cookie time. Why? Why can we say that this is the greatest betrayal against human history, against our human golden age, our heritage? What difference, this is my question to you to answer that question. What difference does it make that thing that we were just describing, that Glaucon was just freaking out about, what difference does it make if it isn't just the good, it's the self? What difference does it make to you that this thing which is beyond even ousia and being, beyond truth and knowledge, in rank and in power, is the self?
That's weird that you think that.
What difference does it make? The good which is beyond even the highest experience of enlightenment, of knowledge and truth and self. Beyond, better. What difference does it make that Socrates is saying that is the self? Doesn't it change the entirety of philosophy? You're not reading some dusty old book. It's not some logical exercise. It's you. You're learning about you. Wouldn't you agree? The self is the most personal, the most intimate, the most immediate, always present for you, always, forever. The most significant and meaningful thing is yourself. What difference does it make to the entirety of human civilization, the entirety of learning, to the entirety of philosophy, that what we have just been describing is the self. It completely changes it, doesn't it? It's the most meaning. You're learning about the most meaningful and immediate to you. Therefore, if this word has never been properly translated in the last 2,000 years, or 1,500 years, since the Dark Ages, can you see why we say it's this specific mistranslation that we call the greatest betrayal to humanity, to philosophy? Therefore, do you see why we applaud Juan Balboa and his family, who have done the work needed to recognize this, to learn this, and to produce this work and to share it for freezies with all of us? Therefore,
The more, the better.
we are very grateful to Juan Balboa and the Balboa family, and of course, to the author of Philosophical Midwifery for helping him, encouraging him to get into it, for helping him through the Philosophical Midwifery to allow him to see the text for what it is, that other translators haven't been able to go through, and to be a guide in the learning of the Logos for him. So, one more time. Anyway, this is all just extra stuff for free. This is all extra stuff. This is just a trailer or prelude. Glaucon, Apollo, the greatest of daemons. Oh, Jesus Christ, Mother of Mary, God in heavens. What are you saying, Socrates? Hey, it's your fault because you compelled me to say what appears to be the case concerning self. Glaucon, and indeed, by no means, if something, his divine daemon, if something doesn't hinder you, please, Socrates, discuss in detail the comparison between this, the good beyond even ousia, and the analogy you're making about the sun. Remember, that's how we think. We look at something that we can relate to in our level of perception. Like we can see the sun is cause of light so that we can see. Similarly, there has to be something the cause of us to be able to apprehend ousia, truth and knowledge. So he's saying, hey, I can see the physical stuff, like the sun, how it causes growth and stuff, and it gives us light so we can see things. Please, tell us about the good using this analogy. Don't leave out anything, Socrates says. But I must leave out very many things indeed.
Is this chat full of dumb cunts?
Sad. Glaucon, please then, do not cast aside the smallest detail. Socrates, I think, on the one hand, much will be omitted.
Too stupid to understand and also refusing to understand. Why not both, right?
However, on the other hand, says Socrates, as far as I am indeed able at the present time, I shall not willingly omit anything. Glaucon, please do not, sir. Socrates, intellect then. Just as we declare self to be dual, intellect then. Think then. Think with your nous. Just as we declare self to be dual, there's the self that can know itself as Usia, and then the self beyond that, that's the cause, in higher in rank and power. One is the king. He's setting up the royal analogy, king and queen. One is the king over the intelligible class of things and place. So they're intelligible, things that can be known through nous, Usia. It has a rank within the hierarchy of development and reality, has its place. The other is the king over the visible genus, the visible kinds and place. So that good, the self that is the good self, is the king over the intelligible realm. So too is the sun the king over the physical realm. In order not to say the heavens, so as I appear to be employing sophistry in regards to the name, thus you have two ideas, the visible and the intelligible. The visible world that we can see, the world that we call the world of becoming through our physical senses. You see a stuffy doing a jumping dance. And the intelligible, that which you can apprehend with that faculty of Usia that can grasp the world of being. That's the cause of all of the physical laws and principles for the physical world to exist. And keeping it going moment to moment. The visible and the intelligible, two different places. Incommensurate, like liters and grams, or liters and minutes. Incommensurate, it's a fun word. How many minutes of coffee did you drink? What? 1 cup. It's not a minute. Although I do need another cup of coffee in a minute, because I'm almost out. Okay. So, 2 places. Have you seen this? I have. Now then, says Socrates, just as if you took a line that has been cut into 2 unequal sections. Okay, cut a line up. And then cut each section in the same self. Here's the puzzle. Now, the past translations have only said cut it up again in the same ratio. But we can read it as the self-logos. Meaning this self-logos we have been learning to study, or we've been studying to learn, in philosophy, the guide to the true, the self-logos that we've been learning to employ through the dialectic to remove human problems in midwifery, has a kind of mathematical proportion as well. Isn't that interesting? Holy crap. So that both the visible realm or kind and that of the intelligible, and you will have clarity and obscurity in relation to each other. Let's draw that on the board. Let's do both. Let's do what happens if we were reading it the old way, and what happens if we were reading it the real way. And we'll see how come we need the actual translation to discover hidden puzzles that we're here to solve in the game. So, get a line. Get a pen. There we go. Where is it? How come I can't see it on the screen? All right. Why is it not visible? Okay, let's close that and open it again. Oh, this is good stuff. If you are tuning in for the first time in today's podcast, you have picked a great one. Oh my God, you're going to be so wise. You're going to tell all your friends. You heard of the divided line? Peasants. And you can spit on your friends for being so ignorant. You can say,
I can't walk and chew gum at the same time.
call them stupid for not being able to walk and chew gum at the same time. Why aren't you loading? And then even if your friends say, yeah, of course, I've heard of the divided line. You cut a line up in a proportion and then you use the same proportion. Then you go, ha, 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 ha. You simple-minded fool. And you can pat them on the head and say, I remember when I was as stupid as you. You think you've read the divided line. Oh, and you pat them hard so it annoys them. You don't even get that the real puzzle you can only see if you learn how to read ancient Greek. Have you read ancient Greek? You silly boy. You silly small little child. Why isn't this loading? So I'll pause. All right, I'm back with my coffee. So we were talking about the most important thing about doing philosophy, patronizing your friends and making them feel small so you can feel superior and wise and smart. When you say to your friends, hey, have you even read the divided line? And even if they say, sure, you can say, petty small creature. You haven't read the Balboa translation, have you? You haven't seen the hidden puzzle. I remember when I was dumb like you. Stuff like that. Fun stuff. So, let's do it. But the first way of understanding it, create a line. Make a box. Divide it up in a proportion. Let's say one is bigger than the other. Let's go like that. Now, use that same proportion. Let's make it about a quarter. What's that, about half here? About a quarter here. Like that. Then use that same proportion to divide it up again. So what's a quarter of this? That's about half here, so about a quarter is here. Let's give it a different color. So if that's about a quarter, then a quarter here, and this side would be about here, I guess. And a quarter on this side would be about here. All right, that's the first way of reading it. The same proportion. These are how the texts used to translate it back in the old days. Proportion. Or currently if you learn it at school. If you're not reading the Balboa translation. So what? Well, you get this interesting thing where you have 4 levels. You've got 1. You've got 2 and 3, which, hey, they seem to be the same proportion. Isn't that interesting? And then you got 4 on the other side as well. Now, what's fascinating is if you read it differently, well, accurately, you realize Socrates isn't saying the same proportion. He is saying the He is saying the click it, click it, click it, click it, click it. See that word? Autos. What does it mean? Self. See that word? What does it say? Logos. Logon. Auton. Self, logos. Our translator gave us both levels. Same ratio, the past translation. Self, logos. Therefore, there is a puzzle here. And I'm not going to solve it. I'm pointing to it. What exactly is the self logos, the very thing we have been learning every day on this channel, the path to our excellence, application to the pathologos, the distortion of the self logos, to remove human problems, the self logos, the mastery, the love of the philodianoia, the love of understanding. What exactly is it in terms of a mathematical number that can be used as a proportion? That's a puzzle that you will only recognize if you've been reading along with us, and you recognize that every time there is the word self, there is often a twist. You can read it as the mundane, it. You can read it in terms of being, and you can read it as we just saw, the two kinds of self. The self which is in being, self-ousia, self-truth, self-goodness, where self is the honorific, points to something in being, and self which is that which is beyond in rank, dignity, and power. So meaning, you can read it in the physical world, that's what we've been doing up until now. You can read it in the realm of being, that's a twist, it's a puzzle. And you can read it beyond. Therefore, is there let's go for the highest. Why not? Is there a mathematical representation of the highest self-logos, the good self, or the good self, which is beyond the self-truth and self-knowledge and self-ousia? Is there a mathematical proportion or representation of this? If so, how would we apply it to the divided line? And I'm not going to do it, because to figure that out, we have to go into the earlier parts of book 6. But nevertheless, we can we'll use this one for now. Okay? Only because I don't want to be a jerk and destroy a great puzzle that you can work on. Oops. So, back to the book. This is the significance of learning to read in this new way. Hooray.
Freaks. Do a poggers.
Thank you. We're doing a poggers. Okay, so cut it up so it's unequal. The first cut. We did about a quarter. Cut it up again in the same logos. Ratio. Same ratio. So that the visible and the so you have the visible and the intelligible in terms of clarity and obscurity in relation to each other. So we've got this here. Let's make these lines a bit smaller. Make them green. Oh. And on one side, we have the visible realm. And we have the intelligible realms. And he also says, by the way, one is obscurity and one is clarity. Interesting. So the way that we normally are used to perceiving the visible world through our physical senses, is obscurity compared to the clarity you have when you get to this. Oh my God. Not only that, the proportions, the amount of how big this is speaks to the amount of clarity this has compared to how obscure this is. Isn't that interesting? Why is that interesting? Because we're learning from we're learning how to become a mechanic from a master mechanic. We're learning about the cognitive functions, the levels of reality, where we can move through as evolving beings, what's needed to get truth so we can look back at these idiots who are doing terrible things in the world and say, hey, you've got a path of logos, my son. We're learning from somebody who has gone through this, and he's giving us, he's explaining it in words that we can understand. If we want to play. No one's going to force you to do this. That's why we're streaming. There aren't a lot of people out there who can be in this game. Which is a puzzle. Like, what the hell am I doing? I don't know why they are in different places in the world. I looked at it. Okay, when I was learning this stuff back in the old days, there was somebody who was recording videos of these lectures with the author of this book, Pierre Grimes. And he was posting them online for anyone who could come across them. You can find, I recommend checking out the PRS, Pierre Grimes PRS lectures. They're a fantastic place to start on YouTube. Like, been up there for 20 years and it's got like 100 views. It's ridiculous. Or 1,000 maybe by now. I don't know. Anyway, the guy who's putting them up online said, hey, look at this heat map of where people who are checking it out live. And there were a few sections. Like there was like a part of the Middle America. There were some people in, I think, Russia who were interested in this stuff. There were some people in like some Scandinavian country. And then the only other place was California. There were a lot of people in California, probably because that's where, I don't know why. But California was a huge hotspot for the sorts of people who are interested in this sort of thing. Which is interesting because this is the sort of thing we're all here for. It's like it's what we're here for. I don't think we've said, well, I think we've made that point a few times on the channel. Anyway, because we can stream it online, we can connect with those sorts of people who might be interested in this game. So, all right. Not a lot in Australia. Sag for me. All right. Back to the book. On one hand, in the visible, you have images. Further, in the first place, I call the shadows the images. In the next place, you have those reflections in water, and such images that coalesce in surfaces and mirrors that are dense and smooth and bright, or anything of this kind. Do you comprehend? I do. Now, in the other place, the other section of the visible. What? Doesn't make sense. In the first place, I call shadows and images and reflections in... Oh, I see. All right. So when he says reflections and water, I don't know what that means. Keep reading. In the other section of the visible, this section which resembles the animals that surround us and every kind of plant and the whole class of man-made objects. And you'd be willing to say that the visible section, will be divided into the real and unreal, so that the opinable is to... Oh, I see what he's doing. Right. Oh, interesting. I'm not sure if these brackets are helpful to us by the translator. Let's open a past translation that we've just been ragging on already today. But it can be helpful to check some things. Let's pull up the Republic. From the Loeb translation, which is pretty good. I mean, comparatively. And we want to find book 6. I'll bring it up on the screen so you guys can follow in case you want to find this too. Whoops. Let's take down that. Dun 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 dun. And bring up the web page. Here we go. Right. So Perseus.tufts.edu, Perseus. I went to book 6. I want to find the whole book. So view text by chunk on the left. Book. And then I go down. I'm going to zoom in a little bit so we can see it better. And I'm going to go down to the Stephanus number. This is the significance of the Stephanus number. You can find the same section in a different translation. So we're at 510a. This is not the right book. So up the top there's a book, and you can go to book 3, book 4, book 5. We're in book 6. And we can zoom in a little bit. Then we go down to 510a. 510a. Wait. Oh, Jesus. What happened? Let's bring it back here. There we go. 510a, and that's... We're not... Alright. Let's... Buy book. We want the whole book. No. Section. No. Page. No. I want the book. It's giving me book 1, but I want book 6. But the whole book. Normally you click up top for the book that you want, then you click the view text by chunk, and it's not giving me the whole book. Section. If I type in 6 here. It's not giving me the whole book. Here I am trying to teach you guys how to do it. And it's not cooperating. Oh, there we go. No, it's still in book 1. Oh, Jesus. Okay. Go across. Yes, okay. Okay, so there's a little backwards and forwards that's skipping me across to book 6. I'm going to keep clicking that. The little blue arrow there. Now I'm in book 6, and now it's still not giving me the whole thing. All right, screw it. Let's just go to the section we're at. 510. Go back to 5. 9. Page. Not working very well. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Right, let's just take it in terms of pages. Oh goodness. Right, let's go from here. Okay, cut it into 2 unequal sections and cut each section again in the same ratio. Notice, same ratio, not self-logos. We missed that whole goddamn puzzle we had before. The section is the visible and one is the intelligible. Got that. And that is an expression of their relative clearness and obscurity. The intelligible world is so much more clearer if you're able to perceive it than what we see of the physical world through our physical senses. Says somebody who has been through both and gone beyond. Okay, now, one is the visible world of images. By images, I mean shadows and then reflections in water and surfaces on dense and smooth and bright textures and everything of those kinds. And the section and as the second section assume that of which is a likeness or an image, that is, animals about us and plants and the whole class of objects made by man. The division in respect of reality and truth. Would you be willing to say, said Socrates, that the division in respect of reality and truth, or the opposite, is expressed by the proportion? And is the opinable to the knowable, so is the likeness to that of which it is a likeness. What the heck does that mean? Consider then again which way we had to make a division between the intelligible section. Oh, I see what he's saying. I think. Right. Okay. We have images and reflections on the first side, but on the other side we have things that they are reflections of. I think the issue was the translator was adding too many divisions when he was describing same parts within the same division. What do I mean by that? Let's open the board. Sounds like, and I could be wrong, but let's keep going. Where's my board? Yeah. We have the visible realm of images, which we have shadows. Let's spell it right. Shadows, images, but also reflections like mirrors, reflection in water, reflections. And then we have this section here, which it is a reflection of animals and man-made objects. Okay? So, the shadows are the images and reflections in the water and images that coalesce on surfaces, blah, 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 blah. The next section of the visible is what this section resembles, what it is a reflection of. Animals that surround us, plants, and a whole class of man-made objects. You just write plants on the board too. Animals, plants. Okay, now, would you say that this section, the self, would be divided into real and unreal, so that the opinable is to the knowable, such as its likeness is that to its likeness? Interesting. So we can add some more terms. This is the opinable, or perceived through opinions. And this one is that which is knowable. So anybody who says, hey, didn't Socrates say he knows nothing? Well, that would mean he knows nothing of this realm. And by the way, there's a question about what's beyond this realm. But we're focusing on the visible and the intelligible realm. Because, remember, there has to be a cause for even ousia, for even knowledge. That's the good self which is beyond. So one of our puzzles at the end of book 6 is to finish this divided line. But of course he knows something, because the actual quote is, he is wiser because he knows what is knowable, so he doesn't confuse this stuff that lawyers and politicians and generals and sophists and scammers claim that they have knowledge about. He doesn't confuse that as something he knows, because he recognizes what is knowable. These people who don't know this say, oh yeah, I know how to run the world, says Trump, says Putin, says Hitler, says Netanyahu. I know how to run society, says the bankers and the capitalists. I know who we should invade and murder, says the generals. Do they know? He says, I'm smarter than these doofuses, says Socrates, because I know that that shit isn't knowable. Animals, plants, man-made objects, seen through images and shadows and reflections. But he's saying, hey, just as this realm here is the way we apprehend this, so too is there a way of apprehending this, or rather, whatever this level 3 is going to be a shadow or image of 4. In the same way, the image, the shapes and colors that we see, shapes and colors based thinking people, are not perceiving what's true, they're perceiving man-made things. So our question in midwifery is, who? What men? Where did we get our image thinking that people imitate when they act cruelly to others, when they claim to know things that isn't even knowable? Who are we imitating? Who are the man-mades? Who are the men that we are imitating? Could it be mummy and daddy from our earliest, because they are our earliest teachers? Could that be why we trace our problems back to the origin scene? Man-made objects reflected in shapes and colors. So too, whatever this turns out to be might be a shadow of 4. Keep reading. Let us also consider In what way the section of the intelligible must be divided? What's 3 and 4? In what way, says Glaucon? In a way where I have some coffee. Socrates says, in such a way that the soul uses the object of one section of self as images as she is compelled to investigate at that time, as if from hypotheses. Not proceeding to a beginning, but to an end. Right, so we're learning about what's involved in number 3, what we're interested in. We're not interested in baby brain shapes and colors thinking. We're interested in knowing the intelligible, the truth about self and reality. Let's move these guys over a little bit. So, here, 3, the soul uses Okay, let's do this. I need a space. So here, okay, so we use objects as images as if from hypotheses to reach an end. So our shapes and colors thinking is like a hypothesis to reach an end here. So we use this like hypotheses to reach an end. We stop there. And in turn, let's read the book. And in turn, the other section, the soul proceeds from hypotheses to an unhypothetical beginning. And this is a key word here. So let's look it up. Arche, I think it is. Let's have a look. First, we paste it in the snibble.org symbol font to Unicode converter so we can read the Greek. We copy the Greek. We paste it in Google Translate so we get what it sounds like.
Αρχήν.
Achin.
Αρχήν.
Achin.
Αρχήν.
Achin. And we paste it in the lexicon, which is at that Perseus site, which is a Greek to English translation. Greek word study tool. Paste it, hit go. It gives us multiple lexicons and different options. Beginning in a religious sense, from the beginning. Beginning of time, the ruling from the beginning, from authority. Start. Beginning origin. So the first principle, yeah. The beginning, the origin, the first principle of things. So we are returning to the first principle. And as we saw in the causes, the first and final cause. The first cause of the things, but also what we want to return back to ourselves. So, the soul proceeds from hypotheses to an unhypothetical beginning. It's not hypothetical. Without any of those images, and by the ideal selves, she makes her methodical way through selves. So let's put that on the board. So, in the visible world of opinions, we use something like hypotheses to reach an end. Whereas here, in the intelligible realm that we want to be in philosophy, in the evolving human being, the soul actually uses hypotheses What hypotheses have we already discovered? Well, we have discovered the 9 hypotheses, or 10 hypotheses now, of Parmenides as the stages of human development that we move through. And as a midwife, we want to, or as a good person, we want to use our understanding of this and the logos and how to talk through dialectic to help guide people through their stages of development, through their stages of evolution, from nihilism right down the bottom to all the levels going up. But also, we have seen hypotheses in midwifery. A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Wait, A, B, C, D. I think, let's nail it down in the text. Take a minute. In the stages of midwifery, of how to remove problems, we have seen another kind of hypotheses. Here we go, H. So we've gone through the first category of defining your problem, A, B, C, D. We've gone through the second category of tracing it back to an origin zine, D, E, F, G. Now, the third of the 4 categories of midwifery, using a less distorted perception of the past, you can make connections between the past scene and your present problems. You are encouraged by the midwife to take the meaning as solutions or hypotheses. Hypotheses or solutions that account for the failure to achieve the success in your life. And then the individual is urged to authenticate your hypotheses in your experience by pursuing their goals. So there is another hypothesis that we have discovered. There's one in midwifery and there's one in philosophy. Oh, there's many in philosophy, but theme, one class or hypotheses, right? So what? Well, as we just read, and I'm going to bring up the board so I can see it. And we got to make sure it's the right one. There we go. Socrates is saying, the other section, we don't want to be image-thinking babies using shapes and colors. We want to be real good people, real men and women. The soul proceeds from hypotheses, there are our 2 class, to an unhypothetical beginning without any of those images, and by ideal selves makes her methodical way through selves. So, well, these people here in the visible realm use their images and colors and shapes and the things that they perceive like hypotheses to come up with a kind of end, a conclusion. I know the meaning of whatever. Can we see this in midwifery? Do we have certain images and that we used from our early childhood origin scene that are based on man-made things, leading us to come to a conclusion about ourselves? That's an end. We can't progress from it. That's our block. That's why we have to seek goals, because we hit our block and we get stuck there. Whereas, if this is the intelligible that we are developing, we are using understanding to gain hypotheses. We are not using anything back there. None of that. None of though the other. None of that. Angry face. And to an unhypothetical beginning. To some unhypothetical. It's not a hypothesis. You experience it. And it's the beginning. Beginning of what? The beginning of the... Okay, let's... Different color. It's getting a bit messy. Like this. Blue. So we use hypotheses to reach an unhypothetical beginning, using none of the images and shadow thinking, but through ideal selves. What are the ideal selves? Self-being, self-justice, self-beauty, self-goodness, self-wholeness, self-partners, self-same, self-other. All of the aspects of the realm of being. The visible realm is the world of becoming. You see through your sense perceptions, and you use that kind of, as baby kind of hypotheses, to come to your own whatever the heck number 2 is. And you think, oh, that's the end, I figured it out. Whereas what we are doing is doing midwifery to free us from the chains of that and learning how to create actual hypotheses. That's the dialectic. That's the process of midwifery. That's philosophy. Using not things from the physical world. I think that's justice because Daddy was really strong when he punched that guy in the supermarket. Or I think that's justice because... No physical world stuff. Because I think Trump is a just guy and that's what justice is. No. That's physical shadows of man-made shit. We want the real shit, the ideal selves, the aspects of being. However we have come to understand it in philosophy or experience it ourselves, ideally both. We use those as our tools to create actual hypotheses so that we can reach something that is beyond understanding, beyond a hypothesis. We want to verify it in that experience of knowing reality itself. That's the intelligible realm. That's what he was saying before with ousia and being and truth and knowledge. One is knowable. What we reach in the knowable realm, the intelligible realm, happens through hypotheses to the unhypothetical beginning, whereas similarly, in a distorted way, in the visible realm, we gain opinions. Everyone's dumb opinions. Go onto YouTube to see some fascist opinions. Listen to a politician say his dumb opinions of how his opinion is he should get everything and he should torture all the poor people. Or the opinions of Netanyahu, he should murder all the Palestinian people. Opinions. Through a methodical way through cells. What have we been discovering is the methodical way through cells. We've been doing it in everything. We've been doing it in philosophy. We've been doing it in midwifery. We've been doing it in dream analysis. We've even been sharing it in our creations. You guessed it. What do we focus on? We've already talked about this today. Making it the model of spirituality. The use of understanding, focused understanding, recognizing tangents, letting them go until we remove them completely with midwifery, so we can have sustained, focused attention with an open, curious mind on the highest truth that is therefore knowable, so you can actually use your meditation to join with something that is joinable, ousia, through our, and what did we add to philosophy that is missing in every other spiritual tradition, making this the spiritual tradition, because it takes all of the working parts of everything else, add something that they don't have, elevating it to a complete spiritual tradition that you can use to understand everything else. The dialectic. Hooray! The methodical way through hypotheses that don't use things of the physical world, but use the ideal selves. The dialectics we do are on beauty itself, justice itself, and ideally even the good self beyond it. Not so that we can go to the pub and debate our friends, not so we can go on YouTube and own some fascists, so we can ourselves reach that unhypothetical beginning. Keep reading. Glaucon. I have not sufficiently understood the distinctions you speak. Well, no shit. It's hard, buddy. It's hard, Glaucon. We have been struggling today, and we are awesome. Especially Stuffy here, who is both wise and beautiful. I've been pretending that she is the dumb person at the pub, but really, she is the wisest. So, Glaucon doesn't understand it. Good, because now we can get Socrates to talk more about this. Now, you will more easily understand because these matters have been introduced. For I suppose that you... How far do we have? Yeah, only a couple pages. We're right. You know that those who study geometry and arithmetical reasonings and such disciplines hypothesize the odd and the even in figures, and 3 species of angles, right, acute, obtuse, right angle, and other disciplines, ancestors of these, according to a model, regarding them as known while treating themselves as hypotheses, never thinking it worthy to give a further account about selves, neither to themselves or to others, but being self-evident to all. What's that called? Axioms. When you're doing geometry, you accept that even and odd exist. You accept that there are angles in triangles. You never have to give an account of that to others. You have to take these for granted just to play the game. They're called axioms. Thus, you begin from these axioms, self-evident principles, like 1 and 1 is 2, and you proceed to unfold the rest with full consent will end at that, upon which their inquiry was impelled. So, you want to draw a right angle triangle in geometry, or count things in arithmetic, you accept that 1 and 1 is 2, you accept that right angle triangles are equal to each other, so you can find that which your inquiry was impelled, to count how many numbers to draw a right angle triangle, right? Glaucon knows this as well. And by the way, if we get around to it, we might get into Euclid's geometry to see this in action on this channel if we get people interested in it and stuff. It's a lot of fun because it's the dialectic. It's one step down from philosophy. It's the practice of these principles of dialectic, but you have some axioms you take for granted. You can never prove 1 and 1 is 2, but you have to take it for granted and use it. Philosophy, we reach beyond that. But we can do it on the channel one day if you like. Do you also know then that while they make use of the visible forms and they reason about selves, their understanding is not employed about these, but about those which they resemble? By using the logos for the sake of self square and the self diameter, but not about that which they draw. In the same way in relation to other particulars. On the other hand, these selves which they mold and draw are also shadows and images in water. These in turn the geometers use as images, whereas what they seek to behold are those selves which you cannot see otherwise than through understanding. So, it's kind of complicated language. But the geometricians realize that you can never draw a perfect circle. You can never see a perfect circle in the visible section. But they wonder about a perfect circle. They wonder about an equilateral triangle. But you can only perceive those through dianoia, understanding. Now this, I call the intelligible class, whereas since the soul was compelled to use hypotheses in the investigation of self, by not being able to disengage herself and rise above the hypotheses, she does not proceed to a principle, but makes use of those objects as images. Those very objects at the lower level were held as distinct models in comparison with their images. So, what is he saying here? He's saying these geometricians are somehow in this realm here that use objects which can only be understood in order to figure out things in the physical world. They never wonder about them or the cause of them. They use them to make a circle or build a house or whatever. Okay, we can get into more of the depth in that and break that down, but that's the gist of it. That's what he's saying. But we're not really interested in that. We're going to keep going because we want to get to where he talks about understanding. Moreover, understand that the other section, the intelligible, is that which the self-logos touches. Yay. By the power of dialectics. By making use of hypotheses. Not as principles, but not as axioms, but as truly hypotheses, as if they were means of access. And impulses, in order that by proceeding as far as that which is unhypothetical, the origin of all.
Is this chat full of whore?
By coming in contact with the self. The self-logos may then in turn keep holding on to the ideas that are maintained by her. That the self-logos may in this way descend to the end without making use of anything in the sensible realm. But the ideal selves. proceeding through selves into selves and finally terminate its procession in ideas. Wow! That's the difference. All of this stuff about how we are learning over here. What we are learning in midwifery is we get images from our upbringing, especially in the origin scene in childhood, that we get our most fundamental images from. So that we use them to kind of make a hypothesis to reach an end. That's belief. We end up with these false beliefs, and that's the end. That's where we get stuck. What we do in midwifery is look at the man-made objects that cause those reflections and look at what belief we end up with that limits our progression, that causes our injustice, that causes human problems. What we also discover is, in doing that, what are we doing? We are freeing ourselves to cross this line. Use number 3, understanding, to develop hypotheses, not of the physical world, but using the ideal selves in the intelligible realm as our object of focus, progressing through the dialectic, progressing. The self-logos touches it, the self-logos, the intelligible principle from the self that unfolds through all the levels of reality. The self-logos touches this by the power of the dialectics. We've been mastering the dialectic every day in this channel. Because it's these hypotheses through the dialectic, which makes use of the self-logos, that's our means of access, our yoga. Means of accessing that which is intelligible is the definition of yoga, the method. The spiritual tradition, therefore, the complete one, is the use of the dialectic as hypotheses, not using things in the physical realm, but what we are learning about the nature of what is knowable, what is real, what is truth, as our yoga or means of accessing that, because it's intelligible, it's rational, it's knowable. That's the self-logos. To the extent that we do not see ourselves and reality as understandable, as knowable, is the extent to which we play out our fucking problems over and over again in the physical world. Sorry, I shouldn't swear. Because everyone's in this. We are in problems to the extent that we do not understand and know ourselves as rational, as knowable, as intelligible. How do we know ourselves in... You vote for more swearing. Fuck yeah. For emphasis. I don't mean to be harsh, because this is literally the quest that we're all in. Every human being gets shadows and images from people in their childhood, not real things. Beliefs are not real. They are man-made beliefs, our parental beliefs, our family beliefs, within our cultural beliefs. Yeah, okay, fair enough. It'll make the information stick. So, we all are stupid babies. Goddamn babies. No, lovely little babies seeking out. We're born seeking this. That's how come our problems stick. We're born seeking this. We have built into us what's needed for this. But in childhood, we get man-made objects from the realm of beliefs, number 2, from our childhood. And we take the images and reflections. How does mummy look when she finally expresses herself? How strong does daddy look when blah, 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 blah? Not to reach the end, not to reach the beginning of everything, but to reach a conclusion. Therefore, I must be X, Y, and Z. A diminished view of yourself, a diminished view of the intelligibility of self and reality. So philosophical midwifery is somebody at the level of understanding who can turn back to help other human beings free themselves from this level of ignorance. Because as we read, this is clarity compared to obscurity or ignorance. And once we're free of this end, this belief about ourselves that we can't share in intelligibility, we're not good enough, that's the cause of our problems, it allows us to have the freedom to create hypotheses using none of that crap, but our study of the Balboa version of Socrates, translation of Socrates, which is the use of the self-logos, which touches this through the dialectic, which we can confirm in the knowable realm, the intelligible realm, the unhypothetical. It's not a hypothesis anymore once you're at the party. Okay? So, can we see the difference between images and opinions and understanding? Understanding in midwifery can help us turn back and be a midwife, help people see, hey, where did you get your beliefs about goodness and justice? Trump, Putin, Yahoo, or any individual person? Images, reflections of the beliefs of your parents. Where do they get theirs from? And so on, all the way back to the caveman days. And there was a kind of survival in your family, just as the existence of pathologos itself had a survival benefit for our species to be blindly loyal to the images of our cave and the tribe leader. Anything outside the cave is bad and scary. Kept human beings alive until we awoken the logos, awoken our ability to use language and reflect on ourselves. But we've outgrown it a long time ago. So people who say, I don't care about understanding, Daddy Trump is always right and everything different from Mummy and Daddy, the brown people and the immigrants and stuff, they're the bad people and we need to hurt them. That's bullshit caveman zombie thinking that had a survival purpose a million years ago, but we've outgrown it. And we need to outgrow it. Midwifery is the use of understanding in three to free ourselves from those false beliefs based on image thinking, and allows us to make this jump from opinions and beliefs into understanding and knowledge. That's the jump. Two different realms. They're not the same thing. Image-based thinking, belief-based thinking, beliefs that are based on images, is a different kind of thing. That's why it's an evolution. That's why it's a jump. That's why you need to do midwifery and philosophy and get guidance through your dreams. That's why it's the spiritual method. It's a jump. That's why it's evolution. One stage is barbarians, one stage are the true human race. Keep reading. So, understand that in the intelligible realm, that which the self-logos touches, how do we touch the self-logos? By the power of the dialectics. So the dialectic that we use, which is the 4 stages in thinking: definition, demonstration, division, and conclusion. uses the self-logos to touch the unhypothetical origin of all by coming in contact with self. Remember, you are knowing yourself. If you have that experience, people say, oh, I can't believe I was afraid of death. I saw myself, my real self. Now, of course, we want to ask the question of, hang on a second, that we talked about earlier. Something has to be the cause of that. So there's a self beyond this kind of self, but there is a knowable self in Usia, the intelligible self. So you don't use anything sensible, but you use the ideal selves, the eidos selves, the aspects of being that we study in philosophy, proceeding into the selves through selves to terminate your procession of ideas. Glaucon says, on one hand I understand, but not sufficiently, because you seem to be speaking of a massive work. Yeah, no shit, Glaucon. It's literally the meaning of life. It's literally the puzzle of why we are still in problems. It's literally the problem of why did we kill Socrates and take this timeline of the Roman oppression, the Third Reich, the Nazis, the Catholic Church, pages and pages of war and oppression and blood-soaked pages of human history, instead of this path, the Hellenic path, the Greek path, the path of the logos. We didn't take that, we took the pathologos. Therefore, our job, the spiritual method, the learning method, the evolutionary method, is to wake up to this. No shit, it's a massive work, Glaucon. Thank goodness Glaucon was there talking to Socrates to speak for us. It's hard. It's also fun. It's the best fun. It's the most fun. It's the most meaningful. Remember, this is all self. It's not an academic thing. You are discovering your true self, and you're freeing yourself from your bullshit self. Keeps you in your problems. Self-fulfilling prophecy, self-defeating prophecy nonsense. It's the most meaningful. It's the best game in town.
I'm looking for someone to share in an adventure.
It's the hero's journey, as Gandalf says. But yeah, thankfully Glaucon is there to say, can you say more about Socrates? So thank you for Glaucon. So, you speak of a massive work, Socrates. Yeah. However, you wish to determine that by contemplating being and the intelligible by knowledge of the dialectics is more clear than the discoveries made of the so-called arts, which use on the one hand hypotheses as their axioms and that those who theorize selves are compelled to see or contemplate with their dianoia understanding. We're doing love of dianoia, philodianoia, but not with their senses. Contemplate the intelligible using your knowledge of the dialectics through understanding. Is that what you're saying, Socrates? But not with your senses? But I like pointing at shiny objects. I like saying, I like it when this thing happens to my enemies and this thing happens to my friends. I like seeing the people who look different from my family suffer. And I like looking at the rich people and one day imagining my being rich. You're saying we don't do any of that? We just use understanding? And we specifically don't want to understand, we're not focused, or we will understand the nature of the physical world, but as a byproduct, because what we're really interested in is knowing that which is the truth, the intelligible. That's where we use the understanding, which is the knowledge of the dialectic. Is that what you're saying, Socrates? because they do not consider ascending to the principle except from hypotheses. They appear, so these other people, they appear not to possess intellect in relation to selves, although selves are intelligible when considered in conjunction with the first cause, the principle. Then you appear to call the disposition or the habit of the geometricians and their like, understanding but not intellect. By having the understanding subsists somewhere between opinion and intellect? What do we say? Did he get it? Are the geometers who don't question the existence of axioms, things that are equal to the same thing are equal to each other. When you add two things together, the resulting whole has to be greater. 1 + 1 = 2. Do they question those things? Do they wonder about where they exist in the intelligible realm? Or do they take them for granted as axioms and use it in the physical world to draw diagrams, to build buildings, to design cars? In which case, are they really engaged in dianoia, which is to contemplate the realm of being where those principles exist? Or are they appearing to be using understanding, but they're still in the lower realm? In other words, Glaucon is saying, hang on a second. You got image thinking here at number 1. You got beliefs at number 2. You've got understanding at number 3, and you've got knowledge at number 4. Glaucon is saying, hey, these geometricians, they kind of use understanding, right? They understand things when they make triangles and things. So can you say understanding is kind of in the middle of opinions and knowledge? Like it's kind of in the middle ground? Are you saying that the habit of the geometricians, come on, that the math dudes and people of their like, the brainy smart people at college, they use understanding. Yeah, they understand things. They understand about math, right? And triangles and how to build a computer. But they don't use the intellect. Because their understanding is somewhere between opinion and intellect. How do we define understanding? You're using hypotheses to contemplate the intelligible. You use the cells of the intelligible that we get from Socrates to do dialectics on them until you can get there yourself and contemplate ousia, join with the truth, and know nous, the intelligible. So nous is here. That's dianoia. That's the love of understanding. Glaucon is saying, hey, these geometers who never question where these principles come from, they seem to be clever in using understanding, right? Yeah, they use it to make physical things and stuff, and they make physical triangles and squares. So they're kind of in the middle, somewhere in between opinions and, between opinions and the intellect. What grade would we give Glaucon's understanding? Didn't get it, did he? Nope. Are we doing math? We might be using the principles that are the cause of math. For instance, this division of the divided line to understand the difference between the realms of reality and the cognitive functions that perceive the different realms of reality. One uses your eyes and ears and your sniffers. One uses pure dialectic and understanding and contemplates reality as a different cognitive function called nous. We might use mathematics, or we might be understanding the principles of mathematics and using it in the highest level, because this is a mathematical or a ratio division. This is a proportion that's used. In fact, it's the self-logos proportion. That's one of the puzzles of the text. What would be the highest kind of, the most archetypal proportion that would be the mathematical representation of the self-logos? Sure, we can use it and understand the cause. Are we doing math though? So, fuck you, Glaucon. No, just kidding. That's for Gnarly in chat. He wants more swears. Screw you, hippie. Not hippie. He's not getting it though. Of course he's not. He's learning. You have taken my meaning sufficiently. Now, the word sufficiently is carrying a heavy load. What's the expression? This word is doing a lot of work or something. It's carrying a lot of load. And there's an expression, I can forget what it is. This word is doing a lot here. Sufficiently. Yeah. By the way, earlier he says a similar thing, doesn't he? When he says, "Great Scots, Socrates, please tell me everything about not just the intelligible realm, but the cause of the intelligible realm." So, whatever this divided line is, there is still a question that Glaucon is saying, hey, what's here? So that puzzle about what exactly is the self-logos ratio or proportion is needed to answer Glaucon's question that Socrates is saying, not for you, my son. Because he said, hey, by the way, there is the good self that is the cause and conditions for there to be a knowable experience and the cause of it to be able to be known. Just like you need the sun to see stuff. You need light to exist as a condition for sight in the visible realm. So too, there has to be conditions and causes for there to be an intelligible realm. And Glaucon says, holy crap, Socrates, tell me all about that. And Socrates says, I must certainly leave out many things. Says, nah, sorry. Please don't cast aside the smallest detail. Socrates, well, I think I will admit a lot, actually. But it's not because I'm not willing. So why is Socrates saying he's going to not talk about the good self, but instead talk about the intelligible realm instead? Which is still great, but not the ultimate. Not because he hates Glaucon, he's a student. Can we see why? See, this is how we read. We have a question. Why didn't Socrates go for the highest? Glaucon seems to be super keen. He says, Holy Jesus Christ, Mother of Mary, Mother of Mary, Jesus and Joseph and Mary and Jerusalem and Jehovah. Moses and Muhammad and Jehovah and Jesus, Jehovah, just and all of the saints in the sky. So he's keen. Why did he say? Why does Socrates says, well, I am going to leave out lots of things, actually. Now, reading further, we can take that question with us as a puzzle that now when he comes to this conclusion, how does Glaucon make sense of what he has been told about the intelligible realm? Does understanding subsist somewhere between intellect and opinion? Does it look like it on the board? Let's use red. Is understanding somehow on both sides of the line between opinion and intellect? Or is it completely over the line? Therefore, when he says, hey, the geometricians use understanding to look at shapes and colors and things, is that the object of this line? This whole section has the object of focus, the intelligible, as our object of focus in our dialectics through understanding, but also as the knowable thing. It's the intelligible, it's a different thing. Glaucon doesn't get it. He's thinking it's over here somewhere. It's between somehow. What the heck? You're crazy. What do we say?
We're going to engage in dishonesty?
Come on, Glaucon. You're going to engage in dishonesty? Glaucon.
Don't be disgusting.
Don't be disgusting.
You are a fantastic moron.
Glaucon, you're a fantastic moron.
Too stupid to understand and also refusing to understand.
Well, maybe he's a bit too stupid, but he's trying. He's not like people stuck here who refuse to understand. That's why we have midwifery. But yeah, if he's not able to understand the difference between belief thinking, focused on the visible realm like mathematicians, and what we are doing in philodianoia, can we see why Socrates didn't talk about this? By the way, if it's not mentioned, could we figure it out ourselves if we go through book 6 and look for the puzzles? In the same way we had a puzzle about why this was left out, but now we have our answer. Interesting, right? Indeed. So all of this is to gain an understanding of what we are doing specifically in midwifery. Why it's taken subject A and B 2 years. And they're still reflecting on the causes of their images and the conclusions that they've made here that limit them from the evolutionary, the spiritual process, the process of growing from barbarian savages into intelligent, mature human beings. We are limited by a kind of belief in 1 and 2 that has taken 2 years of patience of a midwife who is here. 2 years of openness and curiosity of a human soul who is trying their best to cross this line. We're seeing why it's hard. Even Glaucon, who has Socrates as his teacher, is struggling. And we can see why it's worth doing. Imagine seeing that. Imagine being able to wonder about this. So we got a message from our chatter last time. I think it's a continuum. I don't believe in divisions. right and wrong or true and false. Therefore, I can't judge anything. So I'm going to keep my Buddhist belief that everything is suffering. See how that could fuck him up his whole life? If he not only accepts the belief that life is suffering, but doesn't think he has the capacity to reflect on that belief and understand anything. Another thing he said is, well, I don't like there to be two different divisions. I like to think of things as a continuum. Is this a continuum? Who says it's a continuum? Who says that there is something between Glaucon? Now, later on in the text, Glaucon says, how come I can't go further in the dialectic with you, Socrates, to get to here and even beyond here? And in Book 9, Socrates says the only way of getting the particulars of your problem that blocks you going over this line that we can use to reflect on in philosophical midwifery is dream analysis. He says it once, and he has a game of doing that. The whole book will be coming to a single point where he says one thing once. And often that's the whole point of the book. Dream analysis is the only way you get the particular man-made objects, images, shadows, reflections, reflected in your dreams. Every night, 4 or 5 times a night. So we practice remembering them as soon as we wake up, recording them into audio as soon as we wake up. We're training our memory, and we also give us the material that we can reflect on with ourselves on this channel or with our partners or loved ones, if you're lucky enough to have a stuffy. That sounded a bit sad. Because it's not a continuum. You don't carry this stuff with you and then add to it. Mummy and daddy were racist, so I'm going to take that racism and go to college and learn how to justify my racism, and then learn some more understanding like a mathematician and go on both sides like Glaucon says, and use mathematics to prove that black people have a smaller brain mathematically. Yes. Bull fucking shit. That makes you a Nazi. That makes you a Ben Shapiro or any of those right-wing grifters that think that they can never challenge their parental figures. So the Jewish Ben Shapiros take their Jewish parents and justify the Jewish genocide of the Palestinians because the Jewish leader is the same kind of unjust bastard that his parents were. And they have never reflected on the cause of their images here. Not just Jewish people, it's Christian people and Catholic people and Nazi people and German people and Russian people, and America has their Trump. Let's not forget that fucking dude. It's not a continuum. You can't carry the ignorance and injustice from your childhood with you into this game. I don't care if you've had an experience of this through drugs or meditation or chanting. I don't care if you've got a PhD from this or that university. You cannot be free of what blocks you from your personal and spiritual development. You cannot be free of what causes your ignorance and injustice to yourself and others without philosophical midwifery and dream analysis. It's just not possible. Even if you've had a touch of this or that, you'll still have your problems. Don't use your education to justify racism or sexism or inequality or capitalism or any of that horse shit. More genocides. More people starving on the street when we don't fucking have to. Why? The billionaires who delight in the cruelty. Why? Why not use your billions to create a better world? Is it so important that people have to die? You have to take people off Medicare and food and accommodation? It's important for the landlords to become trillionaires rather than everyone have a house to live in. Let's wake up. Come on. Time to grow up. This is the growing up. This is why it's taken a long time for our subject A and B, 2 years at least, for these people. I mean, it's not a principle. As Socrates himself says, you can move like a thief. If you do dream analysis and midwifery every day, if you're lucky enough to have a friend or partner in your life who you can do this with, someone who you can share the love of understanding with, you can move quick. It's entirely possible. Or you can move slowly. Takes courage. Even Glaucon is struggling here to make that jump. It's not a continuum. Two completely different objects of focus, two completely different applications of our intelligence, completely different methods. One is in the realm of opinions, ignorance, and suffering, cause of problems and suffering, repeated cycles. Why suffering? Because you can't get out. Suffering's different from pain. You can go to the dentist and experience pain, but that's not suffering, is it? Because you know you're there for a good reason. You know you're going to be benefited. You know you can come out of it. So for our old mate who was in the chat last time, if he's still around, life is suffering. Was the person here who taught you that life is suffering, was his belief, his man-made belief, a result of him being ignorant of philosophical midwifery? Could he be stuck in suffering? And instead of reflecting on his own teachers, the own source of his image thinking, his shadows, images, and reflections, instead of reflecting on his dear loved teacher, did he just make it a fucking principle and slap a sticker on it and call it a spiritual teaching? It's Buddhism. Life is suffering. Fuck you. Come on, grow up. Sorry. I don't care what sticker you slap on it. Here is the divided line. This isn't an opinion. Opinion is here. It isn't a belief about life being suffering. That's here. It's something you can verify for yourself through midwifery, freeing yourself from your problems, being able to cross this gap, and then using that freedom to share in a new tradition called understanding. And that understanding is fun, and also you can confirm it in the direct experience, the knowable experience. Is that suffering? We asked our chatter, what would it take for you to turn around on that belief, that teaching that you are meditating on? By the way, is that true meditation? If true meditation, if the definition of meditation is sustained concentration, let's write it on the board. This is what meditation is. If you have concentration, you concentrate on something, and you sustain concentration, can we call that meditation? Meditation. Sustained focus on your breath, or on your mantra, or on your posture, or whatever it is. Meditation. If you sustain that, is the promise that makes it a yoga or method of joining, because you can join with it, making it a procession from concentration to sustained concentration and meditation until sustained meditation, contemplation, where you join with the object. If that's the case, if this is what it is, spirituality, whatever sticker you put on it, can he ever make that progression if he's contemplating on something which you cannot join with? If this is the object of every yoga or spiritual method, and he is focusing on some bullshit I shouldn't call it bullshit. It's up to him to realize whether it's bullshit or not. Some belief. So I asked him, how can you judge this? Didn't engage understanding. Well, I can meditate on it. Is that meditation? Or are you adding more energy into your fantasy or false belief? Therefore, can we use understanding to say anybody who's engaged in meditation, you better fucking make sure you're meditating on this, my son. Sorry, who's that? All right, my son, that guy from the movies. The guy who beat up Verbally guy. Stamos. No, Jason Stamos? Statham. All right, my son, you better make sure you're contemplating on this or I'll give you a bunch of knucks. Give me 50 quid. Governor. So, we better be focusing on or meditating on something which is contemplatable, able to be unified with. That's ousia. What specifically does understanding focus on? It uses the dialectic to focus not on this realm like Glaucon is confusing it with, but you are using your understanding, the use of the logos through the dialectic, to contemplate the realm of being. That's philosophy. That's what it is. To unify with it is wisdom. To have an understanding of it so that you can maintain that state of mind and recognize what's different is also the virtue of wisdom in the Republic. Book 3. So, he might not be able to judge. Hopefully he's still around. Maybe he watches these later. Maybe he never does. Who cares? We can say, well, what would it take to turn around and judge the beliefs? If you say you can't judge it, you can't understand, are you limited? Will you always be stuck? Do Jewish people who support the genocide in Palestine say, thou shalt never judge mummy and daddy, or anyone who looks like them like Netanyahu? That's anti-Semitism. That's wrong and naughty. We will kill you. Yes, you need to be able to turn around and judge the origin of your images and ignorance and beliefs. That's evolution. That's learning. That's what we're fucking here for. Midwifery is the method of doing that. Doing what? Judging the cause, just as understanding contemplates this, image thinking contemplates beliefs. We are constantly in a dialectic. We are walking dialectic, constantly focused on the beliefs from childhood, constantly contemplating them, manifesting them, acting them out when we want to be big and strong. When we approach something meaningful and beautiful, what do you think is the model of meaning and beauty? This. Who do you think Netanyahu is imitating when he murders children? Who do you think Trump is imitating when he sends KKK members out to abduct brown children in America and do God knows what to them, and then sends them to concentration camps in El Salvador, Guantanamo Bay, and Florida? This is what it means to grow up, to recognize this is needed. People who are not doing this should never, ever be allowed in positions of power, because they're just going to be playing out the same ignorance on others instead of doing what they're fucking here to do. Reflect on it. Why was he born into Daddy Trump's family, into a KKK family? Why was Netanyahu born into a family of sneaky grifters and con artists who can blackmail and their way into genocide? Not because it's good and you spend your life developing ways of justifying it like we're taught in school today, because his soul has something to learn. We come from the intelligible realm. That's why we recognize beauty and justice, all of the things we never see in the physical world, but we're attracted to beauty. We are wanting justice. Learning is waking up to where we were here and recognizing there was something our soul was carrying that prevented us from staying in this realm and moving forward. That's why we have the families we have. That's why we get the pathologos we have. So we can see there is a cosmic justice behind all of the apparent physical injustices in the world. Our issue is taking that seriously. Well, and fun, it's fun.
Where's the joy? Where's the whimsy? Where's the childlike wonder, dude?
But being mature about it. Not saying, oh yeah, let's give the worst among us the guns. Let's give the worst among us all the money and then create a system where that's encouraged. Childish. There's a reason why we have the problems we have, especially since this is entirely provable that we can solve them. That's what we're seeing in midwifery. Takes some time, but we have time. That's what we have here. We have time and space in the physical realm. Intelligible realm is different. We have time. Now, you could also say we don't have time because we have nuclear weapons and we have such extreme inequality as a result of the fascist capitalism that our species doesn't have time, so it's time to get to work. And recognize this. What we've ignored for 1,500 years. Learn what it takes, experience what it takes as we go through it, and if we can, move quickly like a thief.
That's weird that you think that.
Let's finish book 6. Yeah, you've taken my meaning sufficiently. Now take me to mean that corresponding to these 4 sections, there exist 4 experiences in the soul, or affections. Intellection is the highest. Nous. So let's name them. Dianoia, understanding, is the second. Trust, or let's get this word here.
Πίστην.
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 Πίστην. Faith, trustworthiness. No. Πίστην. Trust. Trust. Now, why is that? Oh, here we go. Trust or belief. I wonder why. Trusted or belief? Pistien. Believing. Interesting. So, I'm not sure of the difference between trust and belief. Pistien. I'll keep that as a question as we keep moving. It's okay to keep questions. What are we here for? Like the question, why are we still fighting Nazis? Why do we still have capitalism? Carrying a question. Opens up our potential for insight. All right, so the highest section, nous. The second highest section, dianoia. Philodianoia is what this art is that we're doing. The next one, trust, maybe belief. We'll stick with trust. Trusting, you trust someone. Don't you have to trust someone to believe them? You trust mummy and daddy, and then someone comes along like Netanyahu or Trump, and you trust them because they look similar? And then everyone calls him daddy for some reason? Why, I wonder? Why, I wonder? This is why. What are we going to do with that understanding? Image thinking is the last section. And arrange selves analogously. Being led to believe that just as experiences which they represent participate of truth, so they participate of clarity. So let's finish this divided line. Let's zoom in so we can fit it. We have let's make these a different color so I can use the yellow. Let's make this, what color? This color. So we have, here we have nous. Now, again, we have to use the Greek word. If you want to use an English word, you can use the word knowledge with a capital K, but recognize it's nous. It's a different cognitive function. It's not knowing how to ride a bike or knowing how many beans there are in China. It's nous. Dianoia, understanding with a capital U. Trust. And so in midwifery, we look at who we are trusting that causes our false image thinking. So, people who are moved by shapes and colors are in the bottom realm 1. Image thinking. So, these are levels of selves and levels of truth and clarity. So what? Well, we know that, well, what we're getting is, so the movement is, this way is to truth and clarity. And these are selves, level of selves. These are all selves. So what we started with is that there is a mysterious good self. Here, we have to finish the divided line because Socrates says, I'm not talking to you about it now. But the good self is the cause and the conditions for this, meaning every level of reality, including the capacity for intelligent beings to apprehend or participate in those levels of reality, including right down the bottom with the worst, worse than animals. Animals don't treat each other with the same kind of cruelty and injustice of capitalism, of fascism, of fucking genocide. Animals never do that. The worst human species still have a capacity for this progress. It's the double-edged sword of being humans, but also the fact that we can climb this has to raise questions. Why do we have the worst kinds of people? And what would be Socrates? What would be the best kind of people? Because these are selves. In other words, the self is the cause, the good self, or the one self in Parmenides, the good self in the Republic. The good self unfolds itself in a knowable experience here. Just as image thinking is the shadow of trust, so too he said, the shadow of the intelligibility of pure being is understanding. Existing in time and space, we can participate in the shadow of nous in time and space. That's dianoia. So, the shadow of the good self, nous. The shadow of nous, dianoia. The shadow of that, trust and image thinking. Well, this is the distorted shadow on this side of the line. This is the sort of cause of problems. The distortion of this process is this process. The fact that we have the capacity to participate in the shadow of true knowledge of being and beauty and justice means that if someone comes along when we're just a wee little baby, this big, a wee little baby, then because we have what we need for this, someone who gives the imitation of this appears beautiful, appears just, appears knowing, when we don't have the logos and dialectic, we can come to a conclusion about ourselves in image thinking, a false image of ourselves bound by a false belief. That's the pathologos. That's what we address in midwifery. That's why it's the most fucking important thing a human being can do, and we should be mandating it in every school before morning tea time. Demanding a mastery of it for any political or religious leader. Well, religion is to be bound by a belief, so spiritual leader, we'll say. This defines the double-edged sword. Draw the sword here. The negative side is this: we have the capacity for the worst, but the fact that we have the capacity for the worst means we also have the right place if we get the pretenders off the throne and put in the true king and queen, which was the analogy Socrates used earlier. Get the real king and queen on the throne. We have the capacity for being the best species. We have the capacity to evolve in a single lifetime and create a world and species based on this. True virtue, benefit, providence, united by a love of understanding. So, the further we move up this line, the more we progress in truth and clarity, while recognizing that it's all an unfolding of self in self to return to self. See how important the word self is? It's what unfolds. The self-logos was what we said. The dialectic was, the words was the self-logos, the self-logos. Let's see it in the text. And highlight it. The self-logos, through the dialectic, to the origin of all. And the self-logos allows you to keep holding on to. That's wisdom, the virtue of wisdom. You don't just want to have that state of being, you want to maintain it, don't want to give it up. It's not like a one-off trip at a festival or something. I experienced being, but then I forgot it. Or I had a yoga experience in Buddhism, but now I still got my problems. No. The self-logos holds on to it and touches it. Self-logos again here. Reaches the end. So what? So it's the... the good self that unfolds the levels of selves. And that's what we just read. The selves, the further we progress through the self-logos, through the dialectic, allows us to participate more in truth and clarity. So everything is from self, progressing back through selves, using the self-logos to reach the unhypothetical beginning of all, the self. Everything is from self, unfolding in self, returning through self. That's philodianoia. That's what we're learning. And mastering, and verifying, and turning around and helping others. Please. So, the 4 affections of the soul. Nous is the highest. Dianoia, the second. Trust, epistis, the third. Image thinking, the last. Cells are arranged analogously, meaning they are like each other. The unfolding is through likeness. Being is like, but it's a shadow, the good self. Understanding is like, but a shadow, nous. Your shadow is like you, but not you. Analogy, also what we're using to return home. This line is not a real line. We're using the line as analogy. We're using the metaphor of the sun as analogy. We're using the king and queen. We haven't gotten into it today, but there's the king and queen analogy we can get into as well in the Republic when we get into it. So, arrange them thusly, and just as the experience represent participations of truth and participation, so too in clarity. Glaucon says, I understand and I concur, and I arrange them as you say. And we say, well, go back and reread it. To Glaucon, who kind of messed up a little bit. Also, the mysterious puzzle. We just use them proportional. If we find that analogos, the self-logos proportion, when Socrates is saying to arrange self analogously, is he saying, hey, that good self, take everything you've learned about what I've given you, arrange it analogously, finish the line. How do we do that? We can't do it if we have the ignorance of Glaucon, thinking that the understanding we're doing here is just like math. It's way better. We can't do it if we're stuck below this line. If we think that there is no understanding, or there is no knowing, or it's bad to challenge, never challenge, toe the line, be a Trump sycophant, never speak up against fascists, never question your parents, be a nice Christian, go to church every Sunday, be a nice Protestant and whatever they do, be a nice Jehovah's Witness and do whatever they do. Never question the cause of our image thinking, and you can't do it. You can't do what he's asking you to do. Finish the line. That's the puzzle. For us, who are going through the process of midwifery to free ourselves from our problems, our injustice, our suffering ourselves, and the suffering we inflict on others, we are having the fun game of reading the dialectics to master this level about being, philosophy, and then in each dialectic we've read, Socrates gives us a puzzle about, hey, if learning, philomathesis, the love of learning, helps you get through this, if philosophy is the study of this, because philosophia, this is wisdom, not just an experience, but the understanding in the experience. Not just having this and unifying with it, but having the understanding of the logo so you can maintain it. That's wisdom. Philosophia, love of wisdom. But he always says there's a third stage, philophronesis, that again can only be seen if you have the real translation, Balboa, because the word phronesis has not been included and the word self hasn't been included, both of which refer to this. And only if you have the Balboa version can you actually realize the end of book 6 isn't a conclusion, it's a assignment. It's a call to adventure. He's not doing it for you. He's giving you a puzzle to help your own development. Just as in philosophical midwifery, we don't solve the problem for the subjects. We ask the kinds of questions and then we give the assignments, like we saw in, I think it was I. Take the conclusions that you have made from the logos you have given birth to as a result of us using the power of the self-logos, the dialectic, as our map, our model of artistry. And we doing that patiently over a long period of time, many coffees. You take the reflection that we've guided you through as your own hypotheses, go out and test it in experience. It's an assignment for you to do, just as the divided line is an assignment for us to do. Just as being a human being with problems isn't an excuse to inflict it on others or suffer it ourselves as punishment. Fuck no. It is an assignment. We are here with an assignment. Every single person is meaningful. From the worst of us to the best of us. We all get a pathologos. We all have an assignment. We are all here to master the art of philodianoia. Therefore, let's have fun. Cheers. Thank you for joining me today. I hope you had a lot of fun. Thank you to Stuffy for being so wise and pretty and helping us along the way. And I will see you in the next one.